Well, Donna, thank you so much for being here with me on the Entrepreneurial Success Podcast. I am so excited to do this with you because you and I already had so many amazing chats beforehand. However, before we just dive right in, why don't I hand over to you so you can tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Thank you so much, Henriette, for having me on your podcast. It's such a novelty for me because I have my own podcast, the Wedding Procast UK. So I'm used to doing the interviewing, not being the interviewed. So this is an experience for me. And then now we've just got a helicopter flying over. So that's great for the sound. Sorry about that.
It's part of human life. This is why we do it. This is why we love podcasts.
So I've been in business for a very long time, actually. If we go back to the first business I ever started, I think I was in my early 20s. And it's my 40th birthday in a couple of weeks at the time of recording this. So I've been in and out. I've always sort of fancied myself as being an entrepreneur. Not really that fancied, just I sit well in that space. I'm an introvert. I like to be at home. I like to be in my own space. And I can find sort of corporate life a bit draining. So I always knew that this is where I wanted to be. And in 2009, as I started my degree as a mature student and single mother of a 12-year-old, I decided to set up my photography business. I had been photographing for a little while, love using my camera, and did a diploma in photography. And then, set up my business and focused mainly on wedding photography and portrait photography, female portraits in particular. And did that for just shy of 10 years. And then sort of, I don't know, I've always suffered with imposter syndrome and sort of really sort of struggled with pricing myself properly and making sure that I'm sort of covering my bases. I had a studio for a little while, which I absolutely loved. But yeah, I just think it was leading to, do you know what I mean? When you look back, and hindsight's a wonderful thing. And I think it was just leading me to where I needed to be. And I needed that experience of working in the industry. And, I loved doing the photos. So then I went and worked a day job for a little while, for about 5-6 years, which really pushed me down the path to where I am today, which is running the Society of Professional Wedding Vendors, which I, bravely, stupidly launched in April 2020, just as the wedding industry ground to a halt. So yeah, I'm sure we'll get into that a bit later, but yeah, that's me.
Yeah, no, it's lovely to hear your story. And I think, so many people can resonate with that because let's face it, everything we do in life is a journey and it takes us to where we are. And yes, I've met so many women who said, I've had this business before and this was such a mistake and it was such a failure. But I don't think, previous businesses that you've had or previous experiences is a failure, so to speak. It is just part of that learning curve and seeing how things are moving forward, and you learn so much more about yourself in the process as well, I'm sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. I always see that I'm a complete believer in everything happens for a reason. I believe that the path is laid out, and I just feel like everything you do in life is a lesson to be learned. And, I did my first business, going way back when I was 18, I was an Ann Summers rep. So I had my own little business with that. So I really started before I turned 20. But then, I did a beauty therapy course and was a nail technician. And I did that for a while and I absolutely loved it. But again, I was so young at that time and my daughter was so young as well, that I just didn't have the ability, as a single parent, I just didn't have the ability to, or the luxury to hang around and wait for it to work. I did it for 3 months and then went back to the job that I was in and said, can I come back please? Because I just wasn't covering my bills. And I was just like, I haven't got the ability to do the time, as it were, because I had to keep a roof over my daughter's head. So, she came first. And so I learned things in that business. I learned things with my photography. And I feel like now I've got the experience and I know what I want, and I just feel I have that a bit more confidence in myself, that I'm on the right path, and what I'm doing is what's right for me. So
yeah. So tell me a little bit about weddings, because when you and I first spoke about it, you were like, I am in love with weddings. I can talk weddings all day and every day. And you were like, even though, you know, I used to be a photographer and did a lot of weddings, you just fell in love with the whole idea of weddings. And I think it's that concept behind it of the romance and the atmosphere that is being provided. But tell me a little bit about what just created that fascination for you.
Oh, I think for me, I'm a romantic at heart. I really am. I grew up watching all of the old movies, all of the old Disney movies. I even downloaded one at the weekend. What was it? Summer Magic with Hayley Mills, who was in the original Parent Trap. I loved her, and it's the one that's got the Ugly Bug Ball song. I'm not going to sing, but it's a musical, and you know, it's just such a little old romantic film. And then, you know, Dirty Dancing, Pretty Woman, all of my favorites, Grease, and those are like were the top 3 favorite films growing up when I was a kid. And I just always had this kind of fantasy. Grew up on the fairy tales, Cinderella. I remember watching Slipper and the Rose, which was a film adaptation of Cinderella, and it was beautiful. And I just fell in love with romance and always wanted that knight in shining armor. I always say, like, I'm a 50s housewife. I've got the figure for it and the mentality. I just like love that idea of the knight in shining armor coming to rescue me. Although I've still got that feminist stance that, you know, I've got an opinion and you're going to listen to it. But I just love the idea of romance. I love romance, and weddings are the epitome of romance. And, you know, the idea that 2 people love each other enough to say, do you know what? I don't want to be with anybody else ever. I just want you from now until forever is just beautiful. And I cried at every single wedding I photographed, every single one. Because it just means so much to me. And I love that, seeing a couple come together at the start of that journey and together and just being so into it. And yeah, I love it. Yeah. And I could talk about it all day.
I know. And I love it because, you know, I've never had anybody who's come onto the podcast who talks specifically about weddings in particular, but we're not just going to talk about weddings, because let's face it, sitting from another aspect, you know, you're a bride, you're a groom, you're planning this wedding, and there's so much going on, which is where you kind of step in a way. And I think with all the experience you've had, you've seen a lot of things happening behind the scenes. So tell us a little bit about that, because I think some of us would go like, oh, we don't want to hear about it. But actually, we do need to know what's going on behind the scenes.
Absolutely. And it is. And the thing is with a wedding day, a couple, especially a bride that's been that little girl that's dreamed of her wedding her whole life, they want the day to be perfect, and they're turning into bridezilla, and they're upsetting their friends, and they're like scrutinizing everything and organizing everything to the nth degree. If anything on that day doesn't go quite the way they planned, it kind of leaves this sort of nasty taste in the mouth, I suppose. And it shouldn't happen for human error. Do you know what I mean? So like, if the power goes out in the building, there's not much you can do about that. And, you know, everybody will rally round to do what they can to make it better. But when it's something that has been human error, I think that's where vendors start to let couples down. And, you know, that's not professional, in my opinion. So for me, I'll never forget the second wedding I ever shot. I turned up, and I usually would turn up to a wedding almost in the same sort of outfit that the wait staff would wear, in a way, where I would wear sort of black slacks, trousers, maybe leggings if I knew that I was going to be getting down on the floor, ballet pumps, or, you know, black like Skechers trainers that are sort of smart, and then a white shirt. And then I might have a blazer or a cardigan, depending. And that's what I would wear. That was kind of my uniform. I did in the end get a fleece as well with my brand logo emblazoned on it. But I don't think I actually wore it very often. It was a bit too big. But, you know, that's what my uniform was, and I would turn up to a wedding in that. And so the second wedding I ever shot, I turned up in this sort of dress, got my camera, went up to the bride, introduced myself to, her parents, and it was brilliant. And then what happened was, I kind of, at the corner of my eye, saw this guy stood over the edge. I thought, what's he doing there? Like, he looked completely out of place. He didn't look like a guest, didn't look like a vendor, just looked like some guy that had just finished at the gym and decided to hang around in a churchyard smoking. I was just like, what's that all about? Just ignored him, carried on photographing people as they arrived. And then what happened was, the bride, I went, oh, Donna, come here, I just want to introduce you to somebody. She took me over to this guy, full on matching tracksuit, jacket and trousers, white trainers, smoking, and said, this is our videographer. And my jaw, I don't know how I didn't manage to, how I kept it up, because I felt it drop to the floor. I was just like, are you kidding me? And I was just in shock that he would turn up to video a wedding dressed like that. Anyway, I introduced myself, we had a chat, carried on about our day. And then at the reception, a couple of the guests hadn't actually turned up, which, is something that I feel is very rude. More than, I think it was about 4 people didn't turn up. And I'm just like, who doesn't turn up to a wedding? Like, that many, maybe one person who's ill and you can write that off. But I was like, 4 people. The bride actually asked us to sit at the table and eat, because I would either add the meal in, they would feed me, or I would say, don't worry about it, I'll sort myself out, and I'd take a packed lunch. And I'd usually take a pack up, to be honest with you, just because I didn't want to eat, normally it's like full on roast dinners and things that people are eating. And when I'm working, it's just too heavy for me. So sandwich and a snack bar thing was enough for me, working on the adrenaline. And she was like, would you please come and sit at a table and eat, because we don't want to waste the food. And I was like, okay, yeah, no problem. So professionally sat at the table with my Diet Coke, speaking to the guests, and he rocks up, sits next to me in his tracksuit, his beer. And I'm just like, what is going on? Why are you drinking? You're working. You're literally in charge of keeping a camera steady, and you're drinking alcohol in the middle of the
gone
day.
Out of the window.
Yeah, I was just like, where is the professionalism, honestly? And then when I came to showing the guys their photos, I went to their house to do a show. And they went, we got our video back. Do you want to see it? And curiosity got the better of me. I was like, yeah, I do. And they were like, really disappointed. And my heart broke for them, because, I always say to couples that, you come out of your wedding day with 2 things, your husband or wife and your photographs. And you better hope both are brilliant, because that's your memories right there. You've got your partner for life. And then everything that you paid all that money for, everything you put all that effort for, is contained within these images that's taken. And if they aren't great, you're not going to want to look at them, and you start to lose those memories. And that's just heartbreaking to me in the first place. And on another level, a video is a similar thing, where you're actually hearing the voices and you're seeing the smiles come and go, and the laughter, and it's all in action. And so it's that step above what looking through your photo album is. And I feel that people tend to look at their album more, look at their photos more, but the video, that really pulls the emotions when you're listening to speeches again. And to know that they were disappointed in what they got. And when I saw it, it was shaky, the edits were rough, it wasn't a great video. And I said, did you have a contract with him? And they said, no, we didn't. But they signed a contract with me, so they know contracts exist between people. And I was just like, what? So they had no comeback either, because they couldn't really fight for their money back, because there wasn't even a trail of it. And I was just heartbroken for them. And I was like, that shouldn't happen. That really shouldn't happen. And, over the years, I saw a few things that happened that were similar to that. I had a friend of mine who actually asked me to review her wedding photos for her, because she was disappointed in them. And I was just like, just the fact that you said that means they're not good enough. And I can give you my technical opinion, but I can't really judge the creativity of a photographer, because, each to their own. But he did silly things like her mum, who was very elderly and is no longer with us, was in a wheelchair, and he had the bride and groom stand either side of her like foot soldiers. Well, I know her and her mum were really close, and I know that them crouching down next to her in the chair or moving over to the church bench, which was not very far away, and sitting on the bench with her would have been a much better picture and could have been cropped in a lot closer so you could see their faces. And I was just like, what is that all about? But the best one, you'll love this. The bride was getting out of the wedding car. He went over to her to tell her that a friend of his was going to shoot the wedding as well because he wanted to build his portfolio on her wedding day. Didn't ask, told her. Then he took a photo of her walking up the church path, beautiful church path, flowers either side, beautiful winding path. But he didn't focus sort of down on the path up to where she was. He just shot straight. And right above her head was a great big warning triangle on one of those concrete train bridges. And I was like, what's that all about?
No.
You know, you could have cropped a lot of that out by just angling it and then had the path as a line of sight to the bride at the end, which would have been beautiful. Or the least you could have done was Photoshop the triangle out. Who wants a warning
I just want to
triangle
say Photoshop
over their head on their wedding day? I was like, that's insane. Like, just stupid things like that. I was just like, that's not professional. And so I was heartbroken for her too. And then I actually was a wedding coordinator for a venue in Northamptonshire for just under a year. Before I started the society. And I had another couple of incidents. I was there for less than a year and I had 2 incidences. One where a cake almost fell apart because the person who made it hadn't put rods or boards in it. So 3-tier cake with no structure to it, just collapsed in the box basically. And then another where the DJ that the venue used, not the DJ that I brought on when I started, because they told me that their DJ was unreliable and could I phase him out, didn't turn up to one of the weddings. And I had to look for a DJ on a Saturday in July with an hour before the disco was supposed to start. It was insane. And we found a lovely guy that, stepped in at the last minute. We were phoning around probably 45 minutes before we found somebody and said, I can be there in an hour. And he was actually there within half an hour, set up and playing music within that hour. So I was really chuffed to have found him. Amazingly that he wasn't working that night, but that would have reflected really badly on the venue. And the bride and groom were like, where's our DJ? And it's like, it's human error. When we phoned the DJ, he was like, oh, I haven't got anything in my books. I'm like, I'm literally looking at the confirmation email where you said I have got that in my diary.
Yeah. See, I think this is very interesting because when it comes to wedding plans and things like that, I've heard this from so many other wedding planners and people who's arranging these kind of things and event planners, is in particular when a bride and a groom are deciding on a venue. Most of the times that venue has got almost like a list of saying, this is the chef that we're using, this is the photographer that we're using, this is the videographer, the DJ. And if you want to, do your wedding here, obviously you're going to have to work with these people. And it's the same kind of thing. Those vendors tend not to be that reliable. And just from some of the examples that you've said, I think so many people listening to this cringing, going, oh my gosh. And some people might even reflect back to their own weddings going like, similar thing happened to me.
Yeah.
But I think this is so interesting because this is where your concept came from. And this is where you kind of, set up the society. So tell us a little bit about the society, because I think this is really important. And I think this is so interesting in order to hear your concept behind it, where there's actually, oh my gosh, vendors that are reliable.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there are hundreds and hundreds of professional, reliable vendors out there. They are so good at what they do. And if you have been following the news this last year where COVID has just completely decimated the wedding industry, you will have seen so many vendors there just being there for their couples, rearranging things, not charging them any more for it, giving them refunds if, and going above and beyond to try and help couples have the days that they want. And so there are so many professionals out there. But I wanted a way of showing that. And what happened was, when I closed down my photography business, the reason I did that was, again, it was that kind of being a single mum and not sort of bringing in enough. You know, if I would have been on my own, I'd have been all right, and I would have been bringing in enough to have continued it, to build it up to something really, really great. But when you are a single mum and you've got a child that is depending on you and wanting to take part in school trips, and you know you can't afford it, it just makes you feel less than. What made me feel less than. And I had to do something that that I felt comfortable with. And that was when the opportunity came, and it really did. This job landed in my lap. I took it because it was part-time hours on a full-time wage in comparison to the wages I'd been on before, and I couldn't say no to it. Unfortunately, although it was part-time, it was 30 hours a week, so that wasn't much shorter than full-time really. And with the fact that it was kind of school hours, it meant that as soon as I got home, I had Terry, and the photography just kind of faded out because I was just too much. As an introvert, it was too much to sort of put all that together for me. But the company that I started working for was the British Healthcare Trade Association. And as soon as I started working there, I was just like, oh, the wedding industry needs something like this. So the BHTA has a code of practice that's authorised by the Chartered Trading Standards Institute, and you will have healthcare retailers, people that sell things like, you know, the walkers, scooters, hand grab rails, things that go on the side of the houses, stair lifts and things like that, that all will sign up to be a member of the BHTA and abide by this code of practice. And that code, sorry about that, that code actually, what it does is say things like, if you have to go to an appointment at somebody's house, you can only be there for 3 hours. And if you haven't finished, because the stair lift ones can be quite long, if you haven't finished after 3 hours, you have to book another appointment and leave, because the people that they're dealing with are generally vulnerable people, and it could be too overwhelming for them and too much. So that is in the code, that you have to do that. And if they're found to be disobeying those rules, they get kicked out. And so I was just like, the wedding industry needs something like this. And that is where the idea really sort of came from. And I decided to set up the society. We have a code of conduct, and it is there to help elevate standards within the industry. It's pretty unregulated, as quite a few things, you know, as you sort of work in business, you sort of realize how unregulated so much is. And it's just a way of vendors turning around saying, look, I'm running a professional business, you know, I'm hugely passionate about what I do. Our core values are passion, integrity, and heart. And, you know, that's what we want from our vendors that come and join us, is that they have those values as well. And that they do things above board, you know, that they have contracts in place, that they have insurance, and they have to provide that as evidence. So when they join us, they have to fill in an application form that states that they have that. They have to give us evidence of weddings they've completed, so that we can check that previous couples have been happy with the work that they've done. We do have 2 levels now. So if there are new people to the industry, we don't want them to be excluded, because we want them to be doing things right from the offset. We don't want them to sort of get into bad habits and then try and come in and we say no because they're not doing things right. So new people to the industry can come in. They just don't get the front end part of the membership. So they don't get the promotion side of things until they've got the experience. Yes. So yeah, and that code of conduct is there to just make sure that the standards are being kept. So things like making sure that you're transparent with your advertising, that you are not upselling just for the sake of upselling, that it's something that would really be a benefit to the couple, that, you know, if there are issues, that they have got a complaints procedure in place that can be, you know, used, and just things like that, that couples can go to them and make sure and know that they can rely on them with their wedding day. And, you know, we can't be sure that everybody is going to do everything all the time, but with our members, we are implementing sort of a mystery shopping thing, so that we can just check that they are keeping to the code for ourselves, but also couples that use our members can come to us if they've got any problems and let us know, so that we're aware. And that's basically the idea of it, is to just take that pressure off couples. Planning your wedding should be fun and exciting, and you should only be looking at the fun and exciting things. And I think because of that, a lot of couples overlook things like asking, have you got insurance? Asking, where's the contract? And it's also a little bit uncomfortable as a couple. Like, it is basically like you are employing people to work for you. It's like a job interview, and you need to treat it like that. And if a vendor is upset with you asking to see their insurance certificate, it shouldn't be that they should be more than willing to show you, yes, I'm insured, yes, I've got this certification, yes, I've got my hygiene, if they're making your cake, and they should be happy to show you that information. And you shouldn't feel awkward about it, because at the end of the day, you want to make sure that the vendors you're using are who they say they are. And so one of the things that I do is take that pressure off them, because if they come and use our members, they already know that they've got contracts, they already know that they're insured, and they already know that we've seen at least 10 weddings from them, evidence that people have been happy with at least 10 weddings that they've done. So then they are looking more at, do they fit my budget? And do I like them as a person? And that's what they should be doing, because that is the fun stuff, is like, do we gel? Does our personalities match? And that's what we try and help them with.
And I love the concept, because in so many ways, I think couples, when they plan the wedding, yes, the first thing they do is they're thinking, oh my gosh, we need a photographer, we need somebody to bake a cake. So they obviously go on Google and go and search and do the research there. But nobody would think about, I need to put in a contract with this person, I need to look at their insurance, I need to make sure that they've got a good track record, possibly look at a couple of reviews, and hopefully they are real. But you wouldn't think of all of those kind of things, of what is really required in order to get these kind of vendors, in order to plan your wedding. And I think that's what makes the association so great of what you're doing, because you're vetting all the vendors already. You're taking them because of their experience, you're taking them because they have all the things in place that they should have, i.e. insurance, getting contracts set up, etc. So it just makes it easier for wedding planners, or even just for couples who's planning their wedding, to go like, I don't need to think about all of this stuff. I can just go to somewhere where I know the vendors are qualified, where they have been vetted. And I don't have to go through that whole situation of going, is this the right person? Is he gonna show up in a tracksuit, smoking a cigarette, drinking a beer, doing my videography?
Yeah, I know, it's crazy. And I tell you that I don't mean to scare people, but this is the reality of the world that we're living in now. One of the photographers that I was very heavily following when I was doing the weddings was a guy called Sal Sincotta, and he's based in the US. He does incredible photos. In fact, I used to use his editing services. So he had a whole team that did editing for some of my photography, because I loved his work so much. But he had somebody completely rip off his website, just took all of his pictures, put them up, said they were their own, and was getting bookings for weddings based on that. So you just have to know what to ask and know how to check people, and don't just take people at face value, because that's what my friend did with the wedding photography with the warning triangle. I went on the website, I looked at them, they were okay photos, nothing that was particularly stand out, but nothing that I would have said, oh my god, this guy is a charlatan, don't use him. But there was one wow image on his website, and I was like, oh my god, I love that image. How come he's got that one wow image and he hasn't got any others that are like that on his website? And I did a Google image search for it, did the old turn it around and tell me where this photo comes from. It was the stock image that his website template came with. And I'm like, what?
So you've got, people wouldn't do that research that you've done. in order to see, and people
They
would know
shouldn't
what to
have
look
to.
for.
They shouldn't have
Exactly.
to. How much is that? That's not fun when you're planning. Would you do that? You mean 20 odd wedding vendors, and you've got to do that kind of level of research to see whether they're, lying about their qualifications in that way. And it's like,
Exactly.
no, it's that's not what they should be doing. But just to find that and know that there are people looking at his website that may go, oh yeah, they're okay wedding, but oh, I love that one. Oh yeah, we want him because of that one wow image. And then they book him and then they get disappointed. It's just like, no, it's not on. It's not on.
No, which is why I think that your society is amazing. And I think it would make couples so much more relaxed, knowing that they can go to a place where all the vendors are vetted, where they don't have to worry about all of these weird things happening, like you've mentioned here today. And they can just go and have fun and book their wedding, get everything set up, and just have a great time. And especially these days, I mean, for goodness sake, the fog is finally lifting. We can go back out there and start having weddings and start having those parties and things. So I think it's an amazing concept. So thank you so much for doing that and having that idea. I think it's brilliant, and I think it's going to take off without a doubt. With the fog lifting, as they say, it's going to take off, and a lot more people need to know about it. So which is why we're having this conversation, so people can learn about it. So tell us a little bit about, you've got 2 freebies available for the audience today. So for those listening who's either thinking like, oh, I'm finally getting to that point where I'm planning a wedding, or of somebody who's getting married and they need this podcast and listen to it and they need these freebies, well, then Donna's going to share with you that she's got 2 specific freebies that you can get today. So why don't you tell us about those?
Right. So the first one, as I say, is for couples, and it is 8 questions that you need to ask your vendors when you're booking them. So the society is extremely small. We opened in April 2020 when the whole wedding industry closed down. So wedding vendors have not been eager to splash their cash around because they just haven't had the ability to. So we are a small organisation at the moment, obviously working on growing and obviously hoping to get bigger and bigger over the next year or so, and be able to provide really good vendors for the UK. However, whilst we are in the process, we have obviously got some vendors on there already, and you can go on and look at the directory and check them out. But if there aren't vendors that are in your area, then we have this download that you can get, and it is these 8 questions, so that you know that when you're going to interview a potential vendor, you can ask these questions. Just make sure that you've got the right information to hand, so you can make a really informed decision about who you hire for your wedding day. So that is for couples.
Which is amazing, because like I said, you're a couple, you're so excited about your wedding, but you don't know how and what to ask when you're really having conversations with those vendors.
No. You don't know what you don't know.
You don't know what you don't know. So thank you so much for making that available. What about the second freebie that you've got available for them?
So the second freebie is for anybody listening who is a wedding vendor. So if you are a wedding vendor, then obviously please do come over and check us out. You can get on our wait list. There is a sign up box on the website for that. And we obviously have the podcast, which is obviously aimed at wedding vendors and helping them with their businesses. So you can join the list for that as well. But the freebie that I've got there is 5 ways to increase your income, and it's looking at other avenues, because what COVID has taught us is that having all your eggs in one basket just isn't the best way to go. And you think that your business, it's up and running and you've got all these bookings and it's fantastic, but then something like COVID happens and all of a sudden your income streams are gone. So multiple income streams is definitely the way to go. And it's not necessarily about spreading your energy. You don't have to spread your energy. There are some simple ways that you can increase your income without it taking too much effort on your part. And so this freebie just talks about 5 different ways that you can look at raising the income streams in your business, so that if one falls away, you can pick something up and work on something else a little bit harder and make some more income that way.
Yeah, which is amazing as well, because again, at the end of the day, like we said, the fog is slowly but surely lifting, but you never know, it can just come crashing down again, which is hopefully not going to happen. But at least you've got that backup. So especially for wedding vendors, I think, you know, people in the events industry have been really hit very hard by COVID. So thank you so much as well for making that available. And for those of you listening, if you want any of these freebies, the links will be in the show notes. So go down to the bottom and you can go and obviously download it there. Donna, thank you so much for being here. This was just so lovely hearing your story, hearing about the society and how it all came about. And I just wish there were more people like you who were just starting and doing things like this, who can help us, you know, the public, to just go and find people to work with without worrying about stressing or worrying that we're going to get done in, so to speak. So thank you so much for making that available to us. Brilliant. Okay. Well, listen, I will be in touch with you fairly soon. Enjoy the rest of your day. And for all of you listening, go and grab Donna's freebies, and then we will be seeing you very soon. Thank you so much, Donna.
Thank you so much. Bye for now.
Take care. Bye.